I think we can get started now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for having us. Stefan and myself we would like to take the chance and share the experiences that we were able to do with WhereScape and Fabric. And maybe before we get into the details, let's give you an overview who we are. We're working for a consulting company. We do a lot of project implementations, but also coaching and general consulting. Our core business was and still is data warehousing and business intelligence, or as you would say now, data and analytics. We do have some artificial intelligence business too, but our main focus is still data warehousing and business intelligence. We are Fabric featured partner, and that wasn't quite as easy to achieve as we were hoping for, including the specialist in analytics for Azure. And besides that, we're a long-standing partner of WhereScape in Switzerland, and I believe we were the first partner of WhereScape within Switzerland. And this goes back years. Before we got busy with Fabric, we were able to gain experience within Synapse and, of course, SQL Server on-premise, and all that pays off because things are coming back, or maybe not the same, but you can still benefit from what you did in SQL Server. The project we will be talking about is at Stiftung Solina. Stiftung is German and means a foundation. And they are working with disabled and elderly people. Their business is a mixture between hospital and hotel. And their data challenges are basically this pretty classic data warehousing challenges. They got different data sources. They want to integrate this. They want to build corporate memory, so keep track of the history, what changed in the source systems, and centralize that. And of course, sorry, I didn't. I was told to switch off my Teams, and I didn't. Hopefully, there's not coming too much more. They need an integrated view of their core business entities, like employees. Two different systems to track employees, part-time and full-time, and they somehow need to find their way together. And pretty early from the beginning, they were understanding quite early that AI readiness will play into their hand. So, and therefore Fabric was kind of set, but then the question came, how are we working with Fabric? Do we want to do it all native, or are we using a tool? And luckily, we had the chance to discuss this with them together, and we were asking, what are your expectations? What do you want to do? And IT-Logix is building Fabric native data warehouses, and Fabric is great. Of course, you can do that. You can do that model-driven, metadata-driven as well. But when it comes to model-driven approach, having a GUI where you can derive everything from and use that GUI to do some collaborative design with the business. Like here, look what we got. We got dimension customer, we got dimension product, facts, sales details, whatever. Then you can discuss around that. This is quite hard to build yourself, to do it native. And tool-wise, in the automation market, a GUI-based data automation tool is pretty hard to find. As well, they said, Fabric is great, but when we look back 5 years ago, Microsoft was saying, Synapse is a thing to do. We all need to go to Synapse. And therefore they said, we trust in Fabric, but we would still like to have an abstraction layer, like a platform agnostic logical layer, to make it easier to deploy to a different target platform. Additionally, they were pretty convinced that if they don't have to reinvent the wheel, like code your own data warehouse specific functionalities, if you can buy maybe industry best practices, that comes handy. And when it comes to historization, SCD2, delete detection, or supernatural keys, these are patterns, right? And not every single project has to invent that. And IT-Logix, over the years, we got our own package of pattern that we deliver with WhereScape, so we can get the most benefits out of it. Additionally, they planned to have freedom. Yeah, they don't want it to be locked in a black box system. So data automation, you push a button, but you can't go left, you can't go right, you can just go where the button leads you to. So to have freedom of templates to if you don't like SCD2, maybe you want to have SCD3, maybe you like SCD7. Yeah, up to you. And this all you can do if you have a template-based system. And along with that goes, of course, the need for standardization. They said, we don't want to have this spaghetti code and have things going out left and right. And maybe, I don't know how it is at your projects, but back in the days when I was thinking, you got maybe the requirement build dimension products, and you got 5 very, very good and experienced data warehouse engineers. And of course, everybody comes back with another version of the DIM product if you tell them build a DIM product. So there's not, sorry for that. There's not one, the only right way to do it. But if you have 5 very good ways to do it and they don't match, it's pretty hard to maintain, right? And of course, if you don't have standardization in your data, it's hard to automate. So, and the next step would be, of course, you can have peer reviews after your development. I got to switch this off. Sorry. Yeah, of course, you can have peer reviews after your development. You can say, look, if Jochen did it the way we want it, and you can check back, or you can have a mean data architect with a whip that is after you and always looks, are you doing it right according to our standardization document? But with WhereScape, you have it out of the box. You define these standards once, and everything that you generate gets designed in a standardized way. And these design patterns are centrally defined, so you don't have to fall into the trap of repeating yourself too often to have the same code in every object. So, and you can maintain it centrally. So if you say, my SCD2 processing was very, very nice, but now with the new capabilities of warehouses, it's better to use CTs, or maybe you need to go back to temp tables. And of course, they said we want to generate code. We don't want to do manual stuff. And yeah, these are the reasons why they went for Fabric with WhereScape. But let's have a look how that looks. You're probably all familiar with the Medallion architecture. This is kind of the reference that we use at IT-Logix. And this is, of course, the case when you have to do extraction. Yeah, with Fabric, you can also have mirroring, or you can have, if you're in the comfort zone of having a fitting cloud ERP system like F&O, you can even go lighter with a Fabric link, and you get your bronze layer for free. Yeah, but this is the scenario for we still have to load data from the source. And in our words, we try to be as fast and easy as possible from disconnecting the source and load the same structures into our bronze layer. And we stay source driven until including the silver layer. Here we have still the same structures as in the source, but it's technically cleansed, not business-wise, but technically cleansed and historized. So if Jochen Abel changes his residence, from Zurich to Bern, it gets tracked in SCD2. But the next step is more crucial. From silver to gold, we break up the structures completely. Here we make it all analytics optimized, ready for self-service data warehousing to put on top our semantic models. But of course, there are shortcuts. Sometimes we need to go straight to some virtual layer and show the business direct results, and maybe be more in the position to discuss about is this the right data that we're looking at before we go through the whole chain of enriching the data. For the first piece of model-driven data warehouse automation, how we do it at Solina, we will focus on the source-driven part. So not the way where we disrupt the structures, but where we are driven by the source structures. So this bit. And the question is, what comes into play if you don't go with model-driven? The example would be you need to add functionalities and objects for two source tables. First of all, you need to know, what do I get here? What is it? What kind of columns? What kind of precise data types do I have? Precise data types in Fabric would get lost if you load from the source to the lakehouse and then process further to the warehouse, because the lakehouse only knows primitive Parquet data types. But of course, it makes a difference if you have a varchar 5 or a varchar 8000, because this is how it would end up if you don't have the metadata for the precise data types. So we need some data discovery, some source table data discovery. And of course, we need to land it somewhere. To copy it from the source, we usually go with the copy activity within Fabric data pipelines, data factory. Microsoft still says this is where they optimize the most to have the best processing speed, but also the lowest CO consumption when it comes to load data from the source to Fabric. So that's what we need for sure. But then we need to store it somewhere. We need a lakehouse table. And if I have one object like customer, can do that. If you have two, you might need two. If you have 200, you need to create 200. And of course, if you want to process it from bronze to silver with an SCD2 logic, you need to create a procedure for that. And if you do it once or 200 times, that's the difference. Of course, you can do it generic, but you might find it hard to track what processed what. And of course, if you want to have delete detection, if you want to track one record, Jochen Arbeit in the source was deleted. If you want to still have this, you need to figure that out. And again, on top of that, you need some logic for the staging. And so in our case, this is the model that we're using. You can get 4 views per object. So if you get 2 objects, it's 8. And if you get 200, and so on. Then you need to store it in the silver. There we get another object, a table in a warehouse, and some outbound views to access this. So usually we use the curve view. So we look, where is Jochen Arbeit living today? But there are, of course, many requirements where you need to track the SCD2. And then we get the full history. And if we have requirements as well, like current, including deleted records. And these views we just generate. And we get some error handling, all of that. And if you need to manually code that, it's no fun. You might argue, okay, but you can do all this functionality you could do in one procedure as well. And most of that is true, but you still wouldn't have the views. And all code in one code block, generic for everything. I doubt that this is very maintainable. But let's have a look how we work with that before I take too long. I was not allowed to show you the customer system, but I would like to show you on our demo system. First of all, this is still from FabCon. If you want to do a discovery, this automated discovery, you can just do it by click. It's all integrated. Say Solina, I'll pick a connection. In my case, now I'm using Northwind, the good old-fashioned Northwind, and I want to know what kind of primary keys do I have. Go further, and now I'm not interested in view system tables neither. And I take all what I got in this schema. And you can see, oh, I could do some data profiling too, but I'm skipping that for now. And now all the discovery, of course, you can do that manually or you can code that, but you still have to do it. And here you have it visually. You can go to the business and say, hey, is it the customers table that you need? Ah, yeah, okay. I know it's from a different system. It's not customers here. Okay, you can tell by we're not tracking the country or whatever. You have something to talk about. It's not just code. And from here, you can apply, you can create, I just prepared it. You can prepare logical model. And this is generally what we do. We have a logical model, then we track what we generated, all the helper tables we generate here, and then we export it Fabric specific. This layer could be Synapse as well, or Teradata, or you name it. This is more the physical attributes. And in this logical model, you just say, oh, okay, what is my primary key? Sometimes you can also discover this, but not every table, not every source is good with physical primary keys. In here, you can say, what kind of processing do I want? Do I want maybe SCD1 or SCD2? Here we do data store history, which maps for us to SCD2, and we want to have delete detection. But of course, we could say, we don't care about deletes. We don't want to track this. It will be cheaper anyway with the processing and way faster. And we only need SCD1. So you could simply annotate this in your model. And from here, you can apply the whole logic, the whole structural logic within model conversions. Here, these are the packages that we from IT-Logix somehow came up with over the years. And there's quite a lot in it. But as a starter, there's a lot of rules as well. And if you want to derive all the structures, you can just go and say, do another one, generate all of that. And it runs all the stuff that we need. And this is more or less like we would do it with independently from Fabric as well. So this is what we do on the SQL server. This is what we do on Teradata. This is a huge benefit that WhereScape brings along here. And you can see delete tags, hash values get prepared, null handling, the outbound views get generated, delete detection if I want to see. All this tedious work we don't have to do anymore. And for me as a developer, this is what I love. I don't have to do this repetitive stuff. I can all derive it and play. And then when I say, okay, it looks good, I can make it Fabric specific over here. And it runs just the physically needed template, the model conversion for that, and creates the data type mappings and everything. And now I still don't have it on Fabric, right? It's still just metadata. But if I want to have it in Fabric, I can just say export this. This is a so-called deployment package that Fabric brings along. There it is again, Stefan. The integrated deployment capabilities of Fabric. This is what I still, especially with Fabric, enjoy. You can say where it should go to. Profile predefined, next. And I'm not running that through now. Let me just show you the results. We will end up here. This is the second main tool from WhereScape. This is WhereScape Red. And here again, we get the structure bronze, silver, gold. Everything that I generated lands up here in my lakehouse objects. And of course, in silver, I got all the other objects and all these helper tables and what you name it, right? But if you generate it, if you have a huge number of objects, you don't care. If I want to run it now, I can have another integrated tool, can use a job. Along with WhereScape, there comes an integrated scheduler. And let's use a Solina case. And here I can put the stuff that are exported, group object types, so it all goes sequentially. In parallel, not sequentially. And this can get loaded now by Azkaban is not really configured here on our demo system. Yeah, Solina case, there's the one. And from here, we can run it. There's two ways to run it, and I would like to show you the way that we're using. We're using this job to run a highly parameterized data pipeline in Fabric, because still the copy activity is the way to go. And if you want to run more than one entity, you use a for loop. This is the best way for Fabric to distribute the processing. But where does this parameters come from? If you build it yourself, you have to maintain a control table, right? Somehow this metadata has to come somewhere. What kind of loading pattern are going to be applied? What kind of objects? What kind of procedures are going to be called? And this we already have. With all the metadata, we have graphically clicked together in an integrated way, generated, and we already have that control table. This we feed from our job into this highly parameterized pipeline. And so we have some speed as well when loading. So to bring this together, what did we do now? We had WhereScape 3D for the source discovery to build our logical model, which was nothing more than a little drag and drop and a little, what kind of pattern do I want to use? Then I do the model conversion for my targets and have this logical data flow. Then it gets deployed to Red, and inside Red, I didn't show you all the code with our templates here, but here are templates for how to do a DDL statement, like how grade table looks different on Fabric, and it looks different on Synapse, and it looks different on Teradata. No more distribution here in Fabric. You generate the native code, you define the job, and then it gets physically deployed to Fabric. That's the workflow that we're using. How about the gold generation? And I don't want to take too long here. Just show you the main difference to the bronze silver generation. Bronze silver was source driven, and now we're coming from a dimensional model. It might look like this: classic one, customer, employee, fact orders. And this is what we design as well graphically inside 3D. And here again, we enrich this logical model with the design pattern. This might be a dimension SCD2, maybe 1. Delete detection, yes or no. Maybe we got some supernatural keys. Maybe we got surrogate keys. Maybe we don't go with artificial keys at all. This all we could drive by the model. And we can start very slim, like without keys. But then we see, performance is not good. We need some physical supernatural keys to make this faster. We just switch it here inside the model, do the annotation, let our model conversions run, deploy it, and okay, now it's physical. And the same process. Red and then native code based on templates in Fabric. And within red, it will look like this, just similar to what we've seen in silver. In gold, you can see this that were specific object types as well. You get dimensions, you get supernatural key tables, key map tables, and further down you would see the fact tables. Yeah, Stefan, I think this is your part where you go into the details of the convenience when using WhereScape.
Very good. Thank you, Jochen. I'm just gonna take away the screen and maybe just give me a quick heads up if you can actually see my screen and the presentation, and if you can also hear me, just so that I know. Um,
I hear you. That what I can confirm.
Very
I
good.
think I still see my screen.
I'm on the same slide as you, so I think if I
Okay.
go one slide further, then I think we're good to go. Perfect. Thank you very much. So thanks a lot, Jochen, for
It's
your.
still it's still my screen.
It's still your screen. Oh,
Yeah. Convenience of WhereScape and processing power of Fabric. That's mine. Do I have to?
I see the Solina screen.
Ah, damn. I'm just looking at my screen. Yeah.
very good. So thank you, Jan. All good. So as you mentioned, Jochen, thank you very much for the demonstration about WhereScape. And I'm just going to go into a bit more detail about this interplay between WhereScape and Fabric that we had in Solina. Just to pick up on the main points that Jochen mentioned, right? So they really loved this GUI-based and model-driven approach. And then just using native Fabric processing for performance, and sort of the interplay between these two tools is really what appealed to them quite well. And they wanted to use the WhereScape integrated metadata instead of having control tables built directly in Fabric. So that was also one of the points where WhereScape really stood out. And I would just like to go into a bit more detail, being someone which actually worked, like on a daily basis with Solina, and who was working in basically with both tools at the same time, right? And I'm just gonna, make it very simple. You don't have to be able to read like the details in those different steps. I'm just gonna try to explain to you conceptually. Usually what we have with different customers, including Solina, is kind of a master pipeline in Fabric, right? And what does the master pipeline actually do? So just going through the parts, usually you have some kind of scale up, right? So you have a capacity in Fabric, which you scale up to just have a bit more processing power for your load. And this pipeline can be, your daily load, it can be your hourly load, or at whatever interval you define. That doesn't really matter for this context right here. The next step would be a load from source systems. And as Jochen mentioned, there is quite a few different source systems at Solina, which we basically had to integrate into Fabric. And those different steps that you're seeing in this blue box basically just load data from all the different source systems that they had. There is a bit of data integrity testing coming after that, which basically just tells us, because Solina basically had a lot of SCD2 historization in the load from the source systems. And this data integrity test basically just tells us, is the history actually correct? Did we get any errors? And there is some kind of alerting that would tell us to go look for specific errors, right? In case something failed during the daily load. Then Solina was working quite a lot with reporting. So basically we had a classic Power BI architecture with semantic models and reports on top of that. So we would have a very small step that would refresh all the semantic models, and if all the loads that came before were successful. And then finally, in the last step, we would basically have like a scale down of the Fabric capacity. So it would go down to like kind of background running because the processing was done. And what you can see as a kind of last step is, maybe you've seen all the little red error bars. We do error handling in each of the steps, right? And you can see that it actually invokes another pipeline. It's just some kind of alerting that will raise an alert with us, the developers, and that would tell us, some step failed in the pipeline, so we need to go and have a look. And of course, I mean, this is just Fabric native that I'm showing you here, right? But the big power of WhereScape is basically with this big blue block right here, because that's where the metadata in WhereScape really come in, and where WhereScape really makes our lives a lot easier. And I'm just going to show you a very simple example because that's actually how it's done with Solina. So you have one pipeline, and it's the simplest pipeline you can possibly imagine because it only has a single parameter, and that parameter is the job name in WhereScape. So in our case, it's this source system called PEP. The details don't actually matter here in this context, but you maybe remember from Jochen, we have this powerful functionality in WhereScape where we can define a job, which is basically just a combination of objects in WhereScape that get processed at a specific order, right? And I'm just showing you it here for two different tables. And what you can see in this order column on the right-hand side, and basically the important part or the important information that WhereScape tracks for us is what has to be done. So which tables or which objects actually have to be processed and in what order they have to be processed. And that's really very nice because you can do it with this UI-based approach, right? You don't have to build anything very complicated in Fabric to keep track of that. WhereScape automatically does that for us. And just to go into a bit more detail, what actually happens, because we have this metadata in WhereScape, right, which gets passed to Fabric, or Fabric pulls this data from WhereScape, if you to put it this way. And you can see there is two objects which are being processed, and there is different groups which you can see in the order. So what does that mean? So the load tables, the first step, would basically in Fabric get translated in a way to start a pipeline that will actually load the data from the source into Fabric, into the bronze layer that Jochen mentioned. The second step would be a procedure in Fabric that would identify deleted records, right? There is some logic that you need to do to identify whether a record has been deleted in the source. And that's a procedure which is generated in WhereScape and which can be just started by Fabric. And that's the end of the processing already. There is a third step, which will be another procedure which basically processes changes. So if you, for example, you have Jochen Abild, which gets married, changes his last name. He has a different last name now. So this would get historized, in our PSA table, so in the silver layer. We would have another procedure in Fabric to actually mark the deleted records. This sort of goes hand in hand to the second step, where we identify deleted records. And then in this step, we actually mark them in the silver layer. And then finally, in the last step, we have another procedure which writes duplicates that we received from the source or any other errors that occurred during processing. And that, again, gives us some kind of indication, there was an error. We need to go and have a look. And the beautiful part about this is the interplay between Fabric processing and WhereScape metadata, right? Because we have a very simple job that we can configure in WhereScape, and we have a very simple pipeline in Fabric which builds on these data and does all the processing for us. And so this made our life, and it's not just Solina, but also Solina. This is really where WhereScape made our life a lot easier compared to working in Fabric native or working with other tools which are out there. Now, those of you which have already worked a bit more with WhereScape know that there is also a built-in scheduler, right? So it's called Azkaban if you're working with WhereScape 10. And the Azkaban scheduler is basically, so it also allows you to run the jobs from within WhereScape, right? So you can tell it to process these objects which Jochen mentioned in a specific order. And I have to say here, it is very powerful, the Azkaban scheduler, so I'm a big fan, but I would like to point out a few difficulties which we ran into in the past. And one of the issues that you have is that when you use the Azkaban scheduler to trigger pipelines in Fabric, what happens, right, is the Azkaban scheduler has to constantly ping the Fabric APIs to get the status of running pipelines. So you can imagine, you want to load data from a source. So there's going to be an initial ping to the API, start pipeline X. And then you're going to wait 10, 15 seconds, some defined interval, and then you're going to ping again and ask Fabric to basically give you back the status. Is the pipeline running? Has it crashed? Is it completed? Things like that. And you can imagine that if you have a lot of pipelines or a lot of objects which are being processed in parallel, it's going to be a lot of API calls, which you do on Fabric. And you hit, or you have the risk of hitting API rate limits, where Fabric basically just tells you, you know what, you've asked enough, you're going to wait a couple of minutes until you can ask me more questions, to put it bluntly. And of course, that gives you a bit of additional overhead, which you actually need to handle because you need to somehow deal with these ping failures or network issues in general. And if you just let Fabric do all of this processing, then you don't have this risk because everything is Fabric native, and you can just let Fabric basically do the heavy lifting. And so this is basically our experience. Just to summarize that point, it's better to pull the WhereScape metadata into Fabric, and then you have some kind of orchestration pipeline directly in Fabric. And this is really, using the best of both worlds. To just give you a very blunt or stupid metaphor, let Fabric be the muscle and WhereScape be the brain. Because in our past and our experience, that has really brought out the best of both of these worlds and has worked very well and very stably for a lot of different customers. And so just to wrap this up, what are the lessons that we've learned? And I think here I'm now wrapping up both the things that Jochen said and also the points that I touched on. I think there is 3 main points that we can take away from this. So we called it ramp up versus velocity, but basically it means that you have one option where you can just work in Fabric directly. You open Fabric, you create an account, you start working, you hit the ground running basically. But this upfront investment in the configuration of WhereScape, where you have this metadata repository, you install the program or the 2 programs, so 3D and Red, and you configure all your patterns, it pays off very quickly because as Jochen mentioned very nicely in his presentation, you can reconfigure or recreate objects with the click of a button. If you decide to switch from SCD2 to SCD7 for some reason, it's just a matter of configuring your templates, you press the button and voila, everything is there. And if you just work in Fabric native, there's going to be a lot of work that you need to put in, to basically implement all these architectural changes. The other thing, which Jochen, he didn't actually complete the deployment, but he showed you what it looks like in WhereScape Red, right? And the deployment in WhereScape is actually one of the most powerful deployments that I've seen in a very long time. It's very powerful, and we absolutely love it. I think I can safely say that, Jochen. I think you agree.
Especially since we love to use the boards, the stuff that Fabric brings along, and they got their own Fabric deployment pipelines, and they're pretty good for deploying a lot of Fabric items. But when it goes to sub warehouse level, if you want to deploy single views or single procedures or single tables, it's still in preview and it's shaky. So there we really love to have to cherry pick what did I change on dev, this view, this procedure, this table, and use WhereScape deployments to do that.
Exactly. So absolutely WhereScape. Whenever possible, we try to use WhereScape for deployment. And finally, this last point, which I touched on briefly, is this orchestration of this control with Azkaban, so the built-in WhereScape scheduler versus the master pipeline in Fabric. And here, our recommendation would be to try and bring out the best of both worlds. So, use a master pipeline in Fabric, which basically controls all the orchestration, and you just have this pull of the metadata job from WhereScape, so from the WhereScape metadata repository, you bring that into Fabric. Fabric knows what to do with that, and then it does all the processing and the heavy lifting. So we have Fabric being the muscle and WhereScape being the brain, and I think that's took us some time to figure out that the best constellation for Solina, but now we are here and we are very happy with the setup. So.
And I got to say, it's not only Solina. I'm not allowed to say the name, but I'm currently at the premises of another client, and it's basically 90% is the same that's we built at Solina. And some more clients, right?
I think we also have other clients with the similar setup. And I think, if there is one takeaway, then, Fabric is the muscle, WhereScape is the brain. I think we can summarize with that. And we would be very happy to take your questions now. So thank you very much for your attention. And I'm not sure, maybe we have a look at the chat because
no questions so far.
No questions so far. I think there is also the option of follow-up questions by email, and I think you've received some information regarding that. So that would also be possible in case some questions come up in the aftermath.
feel free. We're here. We got the time.
Thank you both very much. I really appreciate it. This will be recorded, or this is recorded, so we will send out the recording once it's uploaded to the WhereScape website. Thank you both for a great presentation, and yeah, have a great day, guys.
Thank you very much. Have a
You
great
too.
day.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
for having us. Bye bye.